sanibusela malangeni lamahle ibito lami ngingusandile Makhanya kanti-ke sitake sinilethele nango umsebenzi lobalulekile wesilo semhlaba inkosi Mswati wesithathu lesive njengoba esathi imbubo yemhlaba kulamalanga ilapha eveni lasemelika ngekutawonda imisebenzi liyahlukahlukene ikakhulu-ke esigabeni sekuthi inkosi yeMaswati bevele bekunene itawuphefumulela abaholi bemave emhlaba emhlanganweni wakamhlabuhlangene walonyaka sisichazeleke sive ukuthi kutawujinga kube naleminye imisebenzi letawuchubeka emagcenzelweni awo-ke umhlangano lomkhulu imisebenzi lesichazile ukuthi ifake ekhathi kokuthi isilo semhlaba sikhulumisane nabosomabhizinisi bakhona lapha eMelika ngenhloso yokubachazela ngemathuba lasabalele lakhona eveni Eswatini ekusukumisa emabhizinisi. Lokhu-ke kwenteka bekunene kakhulu ngoba siyathi ukuthi uhulumende weNgonyama unehlelo lalisukumisa lokululamisa umnotho welive ngemva kokuthi ukhinyabedwe ngumkhuhlane i-COVID-19 kanti lolo hlelo lolo liconze ngqo ngokuthi umnotho welive laseSwatini ulawulo lihlangothi lolutimele lesitawuthi i-private sector. Naku-ke la sesikhona imbubo emhlaba seyihlanganise betinhlangothi letinyenti sibili kufaka ekhathi be-World Bank nebenhlangano yakamhlabuhlangene yetentuthuko i-United Nations Development Fund ngathi development program lenabo bakhona la kutawuchaza ukuthi ngikuphi lapho bangabambisa lona khona-ke live laseSwatini. Manje-ke nebekunene yasezingene kuwo umsebenzi njengoba sinethulela bukhome konke lokhu kutabe kwenteka lapha eMelika kanti-ke kutawuhamba kuhambe kufika isikhathi lapho khona-ke silo semhlaba sesiphefumulela wona umhlaba. Sanibema-ke nebekunene kokuthi kulo msebenzi lesinilethela wona bukhome nichubeke niwubukele nijabulele yonke-ke imisebenzi yemakhosi.
Just want to really welcome you to really see how we can partner together to shape the landscape of investment and also put Eswatini on the map of the world in terms of ease of doing business. I know 3 countries in Africa, Mauritius, Rwanda, and Botswana, among the global players in terms of the countries that appear among the first 50 countries in the world in terms of ease of doing business. Based on the effort that the people and the government of Eswatini have put in place, we strongly believe that within the next 5 to 10 years, Eswatini could be among the best 50 globally in terms of ease of doing business. Now, we're calling on captains of industries, the CEOs, to work with the leadership of the country, as well as the development partners that are operating in Eswatini to make this goal achievable. On this note, the Majesty and the Queen, our guests, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I want to really invite our technical crew to show us a video on the introductory perspective of Eswatini's investment opportunities and landscape, and how we intend to really imagine the future of investment landscape in the country. Over to you, please.
The Kingdom of Eswatini, formerly known as Swaziland, is open for business. The country's economy is driven by the private sector, and this has repositioned Eswatini as a unique and ideal place for trade and investment. APA offers pre- and post-investment services and advocacy. To fast-track Eswatini's competitiveness in the global arena, the nation is implementing effective policies that will transform the trade and investment climate and turn growth from small steps to giant leaps. Although Eswatini is perceived as a small market, through regional integration, we have become a significant and active trade pivot. We have access to several preferential markets such as SACU, SADC, COMESA, EU, EFTA, AFCFTA, Mercosur, Taiwan Eswatini ECA, and AGOA. Our advancing infrastructure will accelerate the growth of your next investment opportunity. Eswatini caters for various industries like agriculture, which has traditionally been the backbone of our economy, mining and energy, education, ICT, manufacturing, tourism, and many more. To reduce the cost of doing business, the nation's government has set in place special incentives for investors, such as development approval orders, initial allowances, repatriation of profits. With all the right mechanisms in place, Eswatini has special economic zones to bolster economic development so you can hit the ground running at 0% corporate tax for 20 years. The country also has a high literacy rate, with a population that has abundant skills as well as an educated and trainable workforce. Eswatini boasts one of the richest cultures in the world and is renowned for its unique traditional cultural dances and events. These beautiful and colorful events are so attractive that tourists from around the world flock to the kingdom yearly. We are also the hub for many healthy foods and traditional cuisines. A special country to live in, with low crime rates and the low incidence of deadly diseases. All these positive factors epitomize Eswatini's health and safety climate. Choose Eswatini to grow your business today. For more information on how you can access opportunities to grow your business, contact the Eswatini Investment Promotion Authority.
Your Majesty, the Queen, and our invited guest, we have seen the video. There are about three major things which I really underpin from this video. Partnership. And I'm so happy that we have existing partnership that could help us to achieve the issue of reimagining the future investment landscape in the country. And also, we have traveled to many parts of Africa. Eswatini is one of the very few countries you can boast of minimal or low crime rate in any other continent. So I say this because I say this as one of the major factors that investors look into. And also the development of this Eswatini economic zone, special economic zone. And I'm so happy to say the regional director that is here has been one of the architects of this. She did it in Ethiopia, and we are currently doing it also in South Africa, Muzina Mercado Special Economic Zone. And I'm sure being in this journey with Eswatini will give us the opportunity of sharing experiences from other countries where we've supported this. So I strongly believe that we are on the right pathway. On this note, I want to seek your indulgence, the Majesty and the Queen, and our guest, to invite somebody who has been following the pathway of private sector development in Eswatini for some time. Somebody who has really done a lot of deep assessment of where we are. And I'm talking about Mr. Michael East, who is from the World Bank, who is the senior private sector development specialist, somebody who knows the deep dive of private sector development in the country. Please join me in welcoming Michael.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the warm welcome and introduction. First, let me recognize His Majesty the King, the Queen, honorable ministers, other members of the diplomatic corps, ambassadors, all participants, including particularly interested investors in Eswatini, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. So thank you very much for welcoming me here. I'm Michael East, Senior Private Sector Specialist with the World Bank. I'm based in Washington. We have a full team that works closely with the Eswatini government, based in Albany and Pretoria. And I send greetings from our wider team, and I'm happy to be representing them here today. What I wanted to talk about today is a recent analysis that the World Bank Group has done. It's called a country private sector diagnostic, and it's very relevant for the conversation here today. This is a joint analysis done by the World Bank Group, so both the World Bank, who has the government of Eswatini as its client, as well as the International Finance Corporation, which works directly with private sector investors. So this is the result of a collective analysis, working very closely with the government of Eswatini as a close partner as we develop this report. So I have about 15 minutes to talk today. So what I'm going to do is really just summarize some of the findings from this report. But really I would encourage particularly interested investors, other stakeholders to go to read this report. It's available online, and it talks very specifically about opportunities, challenges, and ongoing reforms in some of the important sectors in Eswatini for investors, so they can get a deeper understanding of those sectors and those opportunities. So quickly I'll talk about the report, what we see as ways to unlock more private investment into the economy, particularly investment that can create jobs, good jobs, and will spill over to parts of the economy that maybe are struggling. I'll talk briefly about a few sectors that the report does deep dives on: sugar, forestry, beef, textiles and apparel, and then some of the ongoing reforms that the government is working on to drive more investment, and how the World Bank Group is also working with the government on that. As I mentioned, the Country Private Sector Diagnostic is a joint product of the World Bank and IFC, so it looks at both the public sector and the private sector, what needs to be done to drive more investment. It does talk about constraints, it talks about opportunities, and it talks about ways the reforms are ongoing to drive more investment. So, a little bit quickly about the context of investment in Eswatini. Overall, the private investment has been falling, but I must point out that this was from a higher percentage of GDP than neighboring countries. So, while investment is falling, it started off, particularly in the 1980s, 90s, doing really well. And there are signs now post-COVID that investment is returning, and there's lots of positive reasons for that. And that's what this report and this forum is all about, is how can we even speed up that recovery and drive more investment. In the meantime, there has been more consumption-led growth than investment-led growth in recent years. And that does have fallout to jobs, to employment, to government revenues. So these are all reasons that obviously the government wants to drive more investment, the World Bank wants to support that. And lastly is an important one, that there is vulnerability, like in almost every country, to climate change, impacts of climate change. And some of the investment the government is making, including utilizing some World Bank resources, is to build more resilience to climate change in key sectors, forestry, sugar, those that depend on water, things like that. So I think the bottom line is more investment is needed, it's critical. And I also want to commend the government because clearly this is a priority. This is something the government recognizes. It wants to drive more investment. It's very pro-business, and I think that's the first step is to have a partner and a government that wants to open up more private opportunities. So I'll just be very quick here, but the report talks about two pathways. One is export-led development, and the other is around entrepreneurship and development of local small and medium-sized enterprises. And the report goes into detail about how those two pathways can be followed. Importantly, on opportunities for private investment, we heard a little bit about that before, but the proximity to important markets in the sub-region in Southern Africa, including South Africa, of course, but also a new opportunity with the African Continental Free Trade Area. Eswatini has important markets that it can access. Eswatini has a modern governance system, largely investor-friendly. Government, as I mentioned, prioritizes business environment improvements and increased private sector investment. It is also an important demographic dividend. There's a young population, well-educated, that investors can take advantage of, and that's not something that you see in every country, so that's something that investors should be aware of. So as I mentioned, the report looks at 4 sectors, doing what we call deep dives. This is not to say that these are the only good opportunities in Eswatini. There's others, particularly digital economy is an important opportunity, financial services, and renewable energy. All those sectors are also critical, what we call enabling sectors, so they drive the development of other sectors. But the report goes into more detail about these 4 here. Let's see, my clicker is not advancing. Is there someone who could advance? Thank you. So some of the reasons these sectors were picked, let me just point out a few. So in sugar, there's high comparative advantage. It's already exported. It creates jobs. But importantly, in sugar, there's a very large growth prospect. And the estimate from our analysis is up to 100,000 tons of new exports over the next 5 years. In forestry, what's really important about forestry is there's a lot of opportunity for diversification, upstream and downstream products that can be created in forestry. And so that offers a lot of new opportunity for different aspects of the value chain. The beef sector, there's unused market potential in the EU in particular for high quality graded beef. And there's reforms that the government is making to ensure that the beef that gets exported meets the grades needed to export to the EU market and fill that gap. With textiles and apparels, it's an established sector. It has really high job creation potential for women particularly, and it has favorable export agreements to both the sub-region as well as the USA market. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So quickly, I'll just go just a minute on each of these sectors. So again, for sugar, this is some of the data, and again, I encourage you to go and look at the report. There's growing regional demand for sugar. The number of products that can be exported from both Eswatini and from the sub-region that depend on Eswatini's sugar production is high and is a growing market. One of the important constraints within the sugar industry is that climate change is having an impact on water supply, which is an important aspect of growing sugar. One of the aspects that this report covers is how to make production of sugar more resilient to impacts of climate change, to make the production less water intensive, to make it resilient to more fluctuations in rainfall patterns. So, next slide, please. Forestry sector, growing global demand, particularly for packaging. There's a rise in e-commerce. The number of products that are using forestry products is growing globally, as well as regionally. This is an opportunity that Eswatini can get into. You can go beyond exporting just timber into forestry products. And again, 90% of the plantations in Eswatini are certified for their quality and for sustainability of the harvest. Excuse me. Okay, my clicker is working again. The beef industry, again, an important sector, one that the IFC, the World Bank Group's private sector arm, is very interested in investing in. One of the reasons is that this has high spillover to good incomes and jobs for local ranchers, farmers that are doing the beef production. One of the important aspects that I mentioned is to have a grading system that can certify the quality of the beef exports, and that's something that the report talks about and something that we're working on with the government. And then textiles and apparel, as I mentioned, is already a well-established industry in Eswatini. It's a continually growing sector. Important aspect now is to expand beyond just cut, make, trim into other aspects of the value chain to be able to quickly respond to orders and changing demands from buyers. So this is something that, again, we're working with the government on how can we expand what Eswatini is doing to a wider part of the value chain to respond to global demand. And the good news is that much of that capacity is already there, and the government is making investments to expand their capacity to meet those different changing demands of customers. It's no secret that every country has some constraints on driving private investment. And as I mentioned, there's many reforms ongoing. The report talks specifically about 3 different topics. One is to improve the trade and investment business environment. For instance, one of the recommendations is to implement the national trade single window to make it simpler for exporters and importers to do all of their business, get all their licenses and permits in one place. This is an ongoing effort that the government is taking on. On enhancing private sector participation and competition, the government, in its national development plans, has a reform strategy for some of the state-owned enterprises and some of the state presence in the business sector. And the government is going ahead with implementing those reforms. And so that's something we strongly support to increase competition. As we know, competition in these sectors raises all ships, drives productivity, makes more competitive businesses. And then finally, improved access to finance, land, and skills, especially for SMEs. Skills, finance, these are things that we talk about in almost every country. But what's important is that these skills and finance work specifically for the industries that need them at any given time. And that's something that you can work on through strengthening financial sector infrastructure, expanding the use of the credit guarantee scheme, and then also, particularly, this is an important one for investors, is to involve the private sector in the design of skills development programs. That way, industry has a say in what skills are being developed, and that way, the people getting educated and trained immediately can get jobs. Next slide, please. So thank you. That's where I'll leave it. There's a link to the report here on the last slide. I'm happy to share the slides if the organizers have not. I just want to say that the World Bank Group is a long-term partner with the government of Eswatini, as well as investors in Eswatini and potential investors. I'm happy to have further conversations to link any potential investors with the IFC, which can provide co-financing to private businesses. The World Bank, where I'm from, is committed obviously to long-term development of Eswatini. We thank you for opportunity to be here and present a little bit of our analysis. We hope that this helps to drive the overall level of investment in Eswatini, particularly investment that creates good jobs, creates incomes, lifts people out of poverty, and furthers the development of Eswatini in the medium and long term. Thank you very much.
The Majesty, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we have heard from Michael from the World Bank in terms of a kind of deep assessment of the private sector development in Eswatini. The beauty of it is that there's hardly any of the challenges mentioned here that is not cutting across the entire SADC region, and that the opportunities are very unique to Eswatini, and I think we need to really leverage the opportunities very well. Because you hardly get any country with these unique opportunities. Yes, thank you. Let's be seated. And like I was saying, there's hardly any of the challenges that is peculiar to Eswatini. But the opportunities are very unique for Eswatini. And we need to really leverage it. Because for you to get a country that has those attributes, where sugar subsector is one of the major future drivers of growth, forestry, beef, textiles, and apparel is very rare. This is what we do across African countries. Eswatini has opportunities of leveraging investment for future development. And I just want to really mention a few things. When it comes to the issue of sugar, we have a partner that has done it in Africa, Mauritius. In the 70s, Mauritius started it, but was somehow blocked. But what it did was to partner with one of the leading sugar processing companies in the world. Today, Mauritius is the only country that can boast of exporting about 60% of processed brown sugar to European Union. It's the only country. So I think Eswatini can do a similar thing. In terms of forestry, Gabon has really woken up in terms of not just exporting timber to Italy and many other countries, and then they come back in form of furniture, which they pay a high price for. But they started adding value to their timbers. Now we have the issue of beef. Ceramica, your neighbor, is very strong when it comes to that. I think we have a number of opportunities in terms of countries we can learn from. When it comes to the issue of textiles and apparel, a few countries are doing that, including Ethiopia, that is currently exporting leather products to many parts of the world. And we just started a few years ago. And like I said, these are opportunities for us to really establish the kind of partnership that was mentioned in the video, in terms of using this opportunity to really transform the economic landscape. And I also want to really mention the fact that I think there's an opportunity we've got to learn from, and it's a major lesson based on what UNDP, under the leadership of the regional director, that is here today with us, that any country that specializes in exporting primary commodity will be exporting its own job to where those values are added to it. Place. I think part of the investment forum we're discussing today, we should be able to partner with those that are adding value to those products. Please, Your Majesty, just to conclude this particular session before we move to the next one, as you just came in, we were trying to emphasize a major lesson across African countries that we think Eswatini can really borrow from. That the kind of investment we want in the country should be the one that will be adding value to our primary commodities. Because countries that specialize in exporting primary commodities export their jobs to where value is being added to those commodities. So we want to make sure that the investment we are putting in the country provides job opportunities for our young, talented people. So this is one of the things which I think is really very important for us to really draw from. So on this note, I just want to use the opportunity of you being here to really look at the landscape of infrastructure, energy, and other opportunities in Eswatini, to really hear from somebody who has been driving the process for some time, somebody I have known for some time now. Because in 2019, the regional director and the assistant secretary general sent me to Eswatini to see what we can do in terms of economic diversification. And I met extensively with the Honorable Minister of Commerce, Industry and Trade, where we discussed a number of things. And I'm so happy that you will take us through some of these trends. So, Your Majesty, let me just use the honor to invite the Honorable Minister, Senator Mankoba Kumalo, to come and give us a run-through of this trend and the issues we need to really watch out for. Thank you, Senator.
Your Majesty, King Mswati III, the King of the Kingdom of Eswatini, Ingosigati, the royal family, the Regional Director for Africa, the UNDP representatives present here, the various private sector captains of industry and funders present here, cabinet ministers from the Kingdom of Eswatini, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor for me to present Your Majesty a list of private sector projects, or rather public sector projects, that we are inviting the private sector to participate in funding or participating in through other forms, be it special purpose vehicles, be it fund, build and operate and transfer, or any other form of partnership that will be appealing to your guests here this morning, Your Majesty. Your Majesty, the Kingdom of Eswatini has experienced significant growth in the last year. The report that just came out a month ago from the Central Statistics Office shows that between 2020 and 2021, our GDP grew by 7.9%. This impressive growth has been led by manufacturing growth, by forestry and agriculture, and ICT. And as has been mentioned before, the consumption sector in the retail space is also driving tremendous growth. This has grown our GDP to about $4.7 billion per year, which is over 70 billion emalangeni, which we want to sustain for the simple reason that we do need to create
jobs for Eswatini through sustained growth. We therefore believe, Your Majesty, that coming year to focus on how we grow the economy by funding infrastructure projects is one of the key elements of our growth strategy. We believe strongly that the mining sector is going to drive significant growth in the near future based on the pipeline of projects that we have in that sector. We envisage manufacturing to continue to grow because of the level of interest that we are receiving from international players, and we expect that agriculture is going to grow in leaps and bounds because of the investment in significant dam projects that will allow our agriculture industry to thrive, particularly in the south of the country where unemployment and poverty is hitting us hardest. Your Majesty, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot of infrastructure projects in the country, but we want to focus on those today that we believe still require funding, as well as those that we believe are pivotal for our success. There's a few areas that we are going to focus on today. The first project we will look at is a rail link project, which is a logistics project that puts together trade between South Africa, Eswatini, as well as Mozambique. We will speak to an energy opportunity for renewable energy up to close to 300 megawatts that we see as a big but low-hanging fruit for investors. We will speak to the hospitality industry, where we have a 5-star hotel that we want to commission pretty soon, attached to an international convention center that will be of continental scale, and the infrastructure and the hotel that we need to house our guests has to match the capacity of that particular convention center. We will speak to, again, in the tourism industry, the Big Five game park that His Majesty has launched, and we want to invite the private sector to partner with us. And we will speak on industrial parks, underpinned mainly by our quest to eradicate poverty as well as create jobs. And we believe industry and manufacturing in particular absorbs a significant amount of jobs. And then we will speak to an urban infrastructure development project in the south of the country that will be a consequence of a big dam project that we are currently embarked on, but it will result in urban development infrastructure that will support the people that will coalesce around that particular project. The first project is the rail link. As I go through the projects, I will be high level in the interest of time, but Your Majesty, we have 5 cabinet ministers here that are going to then delve deeper into the meat of each project as we interact with the various stakeholders after the presentations. This particular project is a project that is being run by Eswatini Railways, a government or state-owned enterprise that is looking for partnership funding. As you can see on the slides, currently we've got a rail link that goes up to Mozambique and to South Africa. There's a rail line that sort of stops here in a place called Lotier, and then there's a gap there that we need to solve for so that we can ensure that the seamless rail transportation within the region and Eswatini becomes quite central to the movement of goods between Mozambique, South Africa, and the Kingdom. The project description really is such that it also includes an inland port, an inland container depot because we want to make sure that you can receive and clear your goods to all the various ports in country so that it actually ensures efficiency of our logistics. I want to quickly state that it's 150 kilometers length of a railway line between Lothere and Siphogodwo in Eswatini. There's a feasibility study that has already been completed, and there will be resettlement that will commence soon, affecting about 235 households along the rail line. And on the internal container development, depot development, what we want to say is that, again, the construction of that has started in earnest, but there's a lot of more infrastructure that needs to happen in the second and third phase of that project. The estimated cost is 1.8 billion US dollars for the Rail Link project, and we want to implore you to talk to us about this because it is a very lucrative project to invest in, because the rate of return is in the order of about 15%, but we are going to be doing this particular project in a phased approach. We are looking for public-private partnerships and special purpose vehicles that Eswatini Railways, on behalf of the Eswatini government, would be eager to enter into. The South African railway company, Transnet, is also an integral part of this project, and they underpin this project by committing volume that will be actually used by this railway line, and our job is to raise the money and actually manage the project. So it is a collaboration between particularly Transnet and Eswatini Railways in essence. We see many benefits, up to 5,000 work opportunities and during construction, and maybe 263 permanent jobs that will be created. And we want to create capacity. I mentioned earlier that our mining industry is going to thrive in the very near future. South Africa is also experiencing the same, so the amount of cargo that is being moved to Maputo Port, Durban Port, Richards Bay Port is quite significant, and investing in this is really a no-brainer, and we would like to again implore our partners today to explore this particular opportunity. And I want to say that the inland container depot is also very close to our international airport, King Mswati III International Airport. So it actually enables trade easily, whether by air and by rail as a combination. We have government supporting this particular project, but we really do want to ensure that there is going to be private sector participation as much as possible. The second project that I'd like to speak to Your Majesty is 260 megawatt renewable energy production. We always say 300 megawatts because we round it up, but in essence the exact number is 260. From a project description point of view, allow me to say right now we consume, as we stand here, approximately 300 megawatts of power in Eswatini, and we think we will need about 200 additional megawatts of power in the very near future, and this is as a consequence again of all the pipeline of investments that we are doing in the country, whether it's in agriculture, in mining, where we want to see beneficiation, one of the projects that we are looking at intently is having a smelter in Eswatini, because we have lots of iron ore deposits, and those things are energy hungry. So we are literally scoping our energy demand up to 500 megawatts for the medium term, 3 to 5 years. We currently import about 80% of our power from South Africa, and we produce about 20% ourselves, mainly through hydro, as well as a small component of solar that was launched only last year. Now, the numbers stack up like this. Currently, we produce 70 megawatts between the hydro and the solar. 60 is hydro, 10 is solar. We have awarded tenders up to 75 megawatts for solar as we speak, and those projects are at a commencement stage. We have also advertised 40 megawatts of biomass that is currently going through the tendering stage, and we've awarded 23 megawatts of hydro in one of our big rivers called Great Lesotho, a place called Makuduza, and we intend, actually this happened yesterday, it was in the papers yesterday, there's another 32 megawatts of hydro that has been advertised in one of the big dams in Eswatini called Maguga Dam. So this gives us a total of 240 megawatts by the time all of these projects are finished. So it still leaves us with a gap of 260 megawatts that we need to solve for, which is what takes us up to the 500 megawatts. As a result of that, we think all of those projects that will make up this 260 megawatts, whether they're in hydro, solar, wind, or biomass, will require approximately $684 million US, and again with a rate of return of around 10%, and with a weighted average cost of capital of 2.65%. We believe this is actually again worth investing in and being part of the renewable energy solution in Eswatini. The project benefits is really there for all of us to see, but mainly the fact that we want to increase energy access and energy independence in Eswatini, and we are focusing on a mix of renewable energy solutions. The next project, Your Majesty, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, is our 5-star hotel and villas. The 5-star hotel comes up with the villas as additional capacity. In Eswatini, we are on the verge of completing a continental convention center that's going to host very big functions in the continent and globally and in the region. We are looking to ensure that our guests have adequate and appropriate accommodation for these events. And the 5-star hotel is a government venture that requires a partner that I want to talk to briefly. This particular hotel has 250 beds, and it will also have additional capacity of 60 villas that will be constructed as part of the hotel. We have meeting rooms and conference rooms and multi-purpose rooms, as well as VIP rooms and restaurants as part of this particular offering. The progress at the moment is that the interior fittings for the hotel need to be done to the operator's specification. So we really want to move ahead, but it makes sense for us to move ahead once we know what hotel chain we will be partnering with. But the grey box itself is virtually complete, and we would love to entice you to participate in this particular project. On the picture that I have, sorry, that's the wrong button. On the picture that I have, this is the hotel and this is the convention center on the side that is going to be bringing in a lot of volume into Eswatini. We believe that the cost of bringing the project to a complete close is going to be in the region of $228 million. And again, we are very flexible with the funding options that will support this particular project. In the tourism space, we have a project that my colleague, the Minister for Tourism, will be happy to expand on afterwards. This presentation will be shared with all participants. I see many people taking pictures, which is great, but we will also share the presentation. We call it the Big Game National Park. In Eswatini, we have many small parks, game parks. His Majesty's vision has been that we consolidate all of them and we have one big national park that will compete with the likes of the Kruger National Park in the region and be a source of tourism attraction in the region. We want to merge about 81,000 hectares of pristine land. The proposed area is also known for its diversity of species, and we want to ensure that we develop the requisite infrastructure and lodging facilities to make this project a success. There is an ecological thrust, obviously, to this project, and we want to make sure that we restore species that we might have lost over time, and we also introduce new species. Obviously focus on the big five, but ensure that other rare species become a source of tourist attraction in the kingdom. We, again, just looking at this is what I spoke to, the fact that all of these were isolated game parks that we've now started consolidating, and this is just a pictorial view of what I explained earlier. And we believe that there will be many benefits to this because of its ecological value and making sure that Eswatini remains a tourist destination of note. And again, it is very close to our international airport, so it makes for easy access, and it is also very close to the South African and Mozambican borders, so that we can catch tourists that are looking to explore the region. Obviously, it will improve employment in the country. The support that then we require is a provision of technical support. It is a highly technical area, consultant engagement, and we want to ensure that we develop a proper management structure, as well as funding the various components of this particular project. And again, we are emphasizing private-public partnerships. The estimated cost of this, it was one of my earlier slides, I didn't mention it, is about $100 million to develop this world-class game park in Eswatini National Park. The next project that I want to speak to is industrial parks development. This is my 5th project. We have listened to Michael's presentation, speaking about where our strengths are, where our opportunities are, in our quest to alleviate poverty and create jobs, since we have such a dynamic young population that is educated but jobless for the most part. We believe this is a project that we want to prioritize as a country, and His Majesty has charged us to prioritize industrial development and disperse it across the entire country to make sure that it's not concentrated in the commercial corridors of Eswatini, but rather it is found in all the 4 regions in the country. So we have embraced a decentralized industrialization strategy, as I've said, and we are looking to get 4 industrial parks off the ground soon enough. These will focus on sugar beneficiation. They will focus on forestry beneficiation in terms of having a timber industrial park. They will focus on the textile industry, particularly around the new dam in the south of the country, because one of the crops that will be grown after the dam is commissioned is cotton. We want to make sure that we vertically integrate that industry and provide the industrial capacity to manage that. And it will then focus on other manufacturing opportunities that we see in our pipeline in the country. And all of that will require up to 200 million US dollars, and it will be a public partnership with government that we can explore together. And the benefits, I think I've already stated those, and we want to state that we have identified and designated a number of areas for this around the country. The last project that I want to speak to is the Empangeni Urban Infrastructure Development Project. Empangeni is the place where we will have a very big dam in the country, sponsored by the African Development Bank, and that project is going to be off the ground in the matter of the next 12 months. But what's going to happen is, as soon as that project kicks off, we need to ensure that there's human settlement planning. We need to ensure that there's urban infrastructure planning, and we need to ensure that the infrastructure supports the growth of the industries that will be a consequence of this particular investment. So we want to come up here and say this is a very, very important project that we would like for you to consider investing in, because we see this as a necessary priority, so that as the agricultural industry grows in the south of Eswatini, we have the matching infrastructure as well, which will ensure that Eswatini develop as well. The project cost is estimated at 200 million US dollars. The African Development Bank has done a feasibility study on this concept, and the numbers come from their preliminary estimates. And we just want to make sure we eliminate the nuisance of unplanned settlements around a major project. We want to make sure that the city itself, or rather the town itself, is eco-friendly and provides all the amenities that the populace would be looking for. The project benefits really is there will be income generation as the farming thrives in the area, and we want to make sure that we focus on import substitution because of the agricultural project, and we obviously are going to be creating jobs, and as I've said before, we want to make sure this is an eco-friendly development. So in a nutshell, those are the projects that we have chosen to share with you today, and there are many ways we can partner. There are many forms of financial partnerships that we can form. We can also do joint ventures. We can do build, operate and transfer models, special purpose vehicles, and we can also just take debt as an option, and grants where it makes sense. But we are here to say, on behalf of His Majesty's government, Eswatini is open for business, and we are looking for you to partner with us. Thank you very much.
Your Majesty, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, you have heard from what we usually call from my community, from the horse's mouth, meaning directly from the person that is managing it. It's not, we don't want to lose any information. So we've heard directly from him. Honorable Minister, thank you for taking us through the journey. And when I was taking note of the 6 projects, I added all the figures together, and they're about $3.3 billion. I know 1 or 2 investors that are here today can backroll it. So I'm so confident that this is something that is really very, very central to the pathway we're trying to establish under the leadership of the Majesty. It has the potential of creating between 20 and 25,000 jobs, because one of them is going to generate about 5,000 jobs, the first one. And I strongly believe what has been enumerated by the Honorable Minister provides opportunity for us to really leverage the market in Mozambique and South Africa, and at the same time, kick off the implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. And I strongly believe we can achieve it. So thank you for this particular opportunity. And on this note, if I just want to crave the indulgence of the Majesty and our guest to really hear from somebody who has been, part of us for a very long time. Somebody who has been, getting his hands in the oil of industry in Eswatini. And on the basis of this, it is my pleasure to invite Joe Caldera, the chairman of USA Distiller, to give us some kind of why is Eswatini an investment destination, a country to trade with and a country to invest in. Over to you, Joe.
A very good morning, Your Majesty. Congratulations, Your Majesty, and the Queen, and all the ones that are related to the country that are here. What I have to say is very short. I've been in Eswatini now for 23 years, and the plant that was put up took about 1.5 years, and it's been running very successfully up to now. It's under construction again for expansion, which will make it probably one of the biggest distilling plants in the whole of Southern Africa. We do alcohol, which is exported all over the world, to Taiwan, Germany, Europe, different countries in Europe. And the way forward is that we are also going to be busy with different types of projects. And one is to do maize, about 12,000 hectares of maize, which will be available and reduce the importation of maize that we have in the country. And that would be completely within the next year or two. With the COVID that we've had in the last few years, things have just been delayed a lot in order to finish all the projects. One especially, which is very good for the environment, is that we are currently burning coal, and we have started off the biodigesters that we're going to be installing. Well, they have already partly been installed. We've had our tanks already built, which is 42 million liters, But this, once it's totally constructed and commissioned, which hopefully it will happen probably in the next 6 to 8 months, we will not use coal anymore. Environmentally, we'll have one of the cleanest distilling plants in the whole of Africa. Thereafter, there's other projects that are on the table, which I don't care to mention at the moment because we are busy trying to sort other technical stuff on it. But we hope that those projects will also come onto it at a later stage. What I do have to say is that Eswatini is one of the most peaceful countries to do business with that I've ever come across in Africa. I'm originally from South Africa. And it's very peaceful and very safe to be in if you compare it to a lot of the other African countries. So therefore, I just wish to again thank Your Majesty for everything that has been done. I am a very, very happy person to be there, so therefore I'll probably be there forever. Thank you very much.
Your Majesty, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, and I just want to use this occasion to invite the attention of our captains of industries and investors that are here today. You've heard it from Joe, somebody who has been operating in the Kingdom of Eswatini for over 20 years. In my local language, we always say, you drink an orange and throw it away if it is not sweet. Yeah. If it is sweet, you can drink more than 20. Yeah. That is the case. Joe has really shown us that Eswatini Kingdom is a place to invest in. Yes. And like I've told you, it's not a matter of just saying it. We've been to almost all the African countries. If it's possible for us to develop what they call security index, Eswatini will be one of the best 5 on the continent. So that's really a very solid opportunity for investment. In fact, it is one of the things we call the fundamentals of development. Eswatini has it. So thank you very much to hear from you on this very important one. Your Majesty, our invited guest, I think we need to really move to the next one. And the next one, in terms of the person that I'm going to invite to give us some kind of testimony, is someone who has been driving a lot of development issues on the continent. When she came on board, she introduced what they call the African Influencer for Development, where we pick talented Africans that are driving and shaping private sector development across all the African countries. And again, she is the person who really participated and facilitated what we usually call Made in Africa. The initiative are in 2 countries, in Ethiopia and Rwanda, where those 2 countries are now exporting things to the rest of the world. Ethiopia, particularly the special economic zone. I'm emphasizing this because of the special economic zone that was mentioned earlier. In terms of exporting leather products to all parts of the world, Europe, Asia, North America, Ethiopia is in that through Made in Africa initiative that was initiated. And also the Young African Women Leadership Program, where we then said, okay, there are few African young women in the UN system. And we then said, okay, it is open. And this is the second or the third year for that program. And I will just mention the last one, Your Majesty. And the last one, I'm saying it because Eswatini is one of the very few countries, not only in Africa but in the world, that really have the potential of combining at least 3 to 4 sources of renewable energy. Apart from the fact that it has a lot of water bodies for hydro, if you look at, we've not taken advantage of the mountainous nature of the country because of the wind capability, which we've not been exploring. Solar is there. Africa, if it is possible for us to capture irradiance globally, Africa has about 48% of the total sunlight that we can turn into electricity. Eswatini has it. So I'm saying this because she is a pillar in terms of advocating for carbon market access and finance in Africa. So on this note, Your Majesty, invited guest, allow me to invite my boss, who is the Assistant Secretary General and the Assistant UNDP Administrator, in person of the Regional Director for UNDP for Africa, Mrs. Ahuna Ezakova.
Your Majesty, King Swati III, the Kingdom of Eswatini, Her Royal Highness the Queen, members of the royal family who are here, honorable cabinet ministers of the Kingdom of Eswatini, Eswatini permanent representative to the United Nations, my brother who is here with us in New York, senior executives from the World Bank, and of course from my own organization, UNDP, captains of industry who have joined us, and other senior government officials. Greetings, Sawubona. Your Majesty, it's a real pleasure to be here, to be able to join you for this event today. I first visited your country in 2011 when I was UN resident coordinator serving in the other kingdom next door in Lesotho. And it is hard not to love Eswatini. Thank you. When I arrived in the country, I felt a sense of deep peace. I think if I recall the feeling that I had the most, it was a long weekend trip. So I wasn't there for very long, but I felt very much at peace. And I was struck by the beauty of this country, not just in terms of the physical landscape, but also the humanity landscape, the beauty of the people of Eswatini. Polite, happy, I saw a lot of smiles, patient. It was a very good feeling that I got. And the second trip to Eswatini was a virtual one in the middle of COVID, because my team on the ground, led by Madame Rose, were very insistent that I visit Eswatini, and I couldn't make it physically. So I conducted a virtual mission. The only person I didn't meet on that mission, Your Majesty, was yourself. I was able to meet with almost all cabinet members, including the Prime Minister. And that was an eye-opener. Even though it wasn't a physical trip, I felt I was in the country. And I had a moment of reflection after that virtual mission. And I asked myself, I felt really indicted as a UN official. It didn't strike me until then what it was we were dealing with. I said, this is a country, not just over 1 million people, good infrastructure. I saw the best roads in Eswatini, good electricity coverage. In my country, Nigeria, we used to all become spiritual because of power. So, whenever we call it NEPA, NEPA is the National Electric Power Authority. And most of the time, there was no power. When it came, we were all thanking Jesus. Everybody became religious. Thank God. It was that experience. 97% of the population of Eswatini have access to telecom, which means access to electricity is also there. In this country, you have one language. Everybody in Eswatini speaks the same language, right? Perhaps everybody worships one God. And you're all subjects to one king. And I asked myself, why do we still have 50% poverty rate in this country? It doesn't make sense. It didn't make sense to me. We have 16 UN and other international organizations, entities. So I've been in Eswatini for 30 years. I said, is there something wrong with this picture, right? And as we heard from the previous presenters, this is not a poor country. This is a country that is quite well endowed, at peace with itself and with its neighbors. So I asked myself, what's the problem? And I still keep asking myself this question. Because if there is one place, somewhere, I cover Africa, and I'm always having sleepless nights over the number of people we have to lift out of poverty on this continent. The numbers are staggering. And I'm looking for islands of hope. Where can I tell a good story on the continent of Africa? And places like Eswatini come to mind because I say to myself, it's a low-hanging fruit. With all these ingredients in place, we can actually make it. We can give ourselves 5 years and say 100% of Eswatini is out of poverty. Entirely possible. This country can be unstoppable. And then I met His Majesty for the first time in Tunis in the margins of TICAD conference. And we had a conversation. And I was looking at a man who I felt has a heart for his nation. Why? Because with his status, he didn't have to listen to me. But he sat and he listened to every word that I spoke about what UNDP was about and what we could do to accompany this country towards prosperity. But he didn't stop there. He said, I'd like to continue this conversation in New York. And here we are, in the room with him sitting there. So you also have a leader that wants to have a legacy of lifting his people out of poverty. And Your Majesty, your speech to the United Nations 2 days ago was quite compelling. We heard in that speech a real hunger to move in an urgent way, not only to bring prosperity to Eswatini, but also to bring peace, to consolidate the peace that is already there in terms of the peacefulness of the people, to make sure that it doesn't run away from Eswatini. Recently, UNDP launched its flagship report, the Human Development Report, which we launch every year. This year, however, it's a very unique report. It's titled A World of Worry, a world of uncertainties, an unsettled world. And in it, we talk about the insecurity, heightened insecurity all over the world. It's the first time we did a report that showed that everyone in the world feels insecure. Before, we just talked about insecurity in pockets of countries where you had conflict. This report generalizes, finds generalized insecurity because of what has happened in the last few years. COVID, the pandemic, uprooted a lot of the security that people had. We saw how mortal we are as human beings, how life could finish in a flash. And I think it humbled the world, but it also heightened the sense of insecurity. We saw the war in Ukraine affecting so many countries across the world. Food insecurity, fuel insecurity. So a world of worry is the way this report described. But it said the core message was we can shift from this threat, turn it into opportunity. We can turn this anxiety into action. And I think this very much applies also to Eswatini. The otherwise peaceful people of Eswatini also were faced with such hardship, such insecurity, a sense of insecurity and uncertainty, that we saw the disturbances, the restlessness there as well. But we can turn all of this energy into an opportunity to reset this country. Because I think somehow we don't have the model right. We don't have the development model right. You know, Singapore is a country today that is one of the most stable economies in the world, where there is no external debt whatsoever in this country. So it's only about just over 5 million people. It's almost like a city-state. Many years ago, before Singapore became what it is today, a certain gentleman was sent by UNDP at the request of the government to support them in developing an economic model that fits the context of Singapore. So UNDP actually had a little part of setting this country on the right path of what we see today. All countries want to be like Singapore. I think it's not too late for Eswatini. And I was really encouraged and inspired when I listened to Senator Kumalo, the minister, talk with such great confidence about the assets of this nation. Not only about the assets, but even the pathway to realizing the potential of Eswatini. He is a son of the soil. He is your subject, Your Majesty. He doesn't come from the US, France, or any other country. He comes from that country. We have to believe in the capability of the people of the country themselves. When we come in as external partners, we come to accompany, we come to support. But the wisdom of what actually needs to be done is there in the country. And that's what we have to build on. This is my first message. Eswatini, in its sons and daughters, has got what it takes, the right ingredients, to put this country on the right path. And we, as UNDP, elect to be by your side, behind you, not in front. We can, when you start to fall, we can try to catch. And we can bring, of course, ideas from outside. We have the likes of the World Bank, you heard from Mr. East, who are invested in also helping to identify the grounds for lifting this country as high as its mountains. We have partners like the one we just heard from now, Joe. Your Majesty, I was going to actually sound a warning. If you let Joe continue to talk about Eswatini the way he's talking, you may have a population problem. Many of us might want to relocate. And while I was sitting there, Your Majesty, I was texting one of our influencers for development. Dr. Dushola talked about the African influencers for development, and one of them is a Malian businessman who runs an outfit called the Africa Development Solutions. He's got a heart for the continent. And I said to him, there are opportunities here. You've got to bring your friends to Eswatini. And he said, ask His Majesty if he allows residence by investment. So not being a business person, I didn't quite understand. So I texted him. I said, what do you mean? He said, visa. You know, people are already thinking of relocating to Eswatini with their business ideas. Your Majesty, you know, Ayo spoke about a mission that he led to Eswatini in 2019, right? I think after that mission, because Ayo is an economist, among many things, and he took a group of economists from UNDP and beyond to go and support our team there who were trying to understand the space for activating the economy of Eswatini for human development. And he wrote a report after that mission. Your Majesty, I mentioned that report. I think we should unveil this report because it was actually quite convincing to me, and that was one of the first moments I thought, wow, we need to engage differently in Eswatini. And Ayo today leads our finance sector hub for the Africa region based in Pretoria, even as he also leads our work in South Africa. And it is such, I don't believe in coincidences. The fact that Ayo, living in South Africa, is here for GA, and today, moderating this event, he has been leading what we call the investment maps, investor maps for Africa. Eswatini has just completed its investment. I think Eswatini is now one of the 21 countries where we have done these investment maps, which is linked to the Sustainable Development Goals. And so, you know, that also is another tool that can be used. And this event today is about how we then use these investment maps to attract attention to the country, the right kind of attention. Your Majesty, I do want to speak about the youth because this is one of my passions. I think that Africa's youth deserve a lot more than we have given to them overall. I think that we have a generation of people whose ambition have really outpaced the opportunities that they have. When I grew up, I didn't have a cell phone. You have a digital generation that have access to the possibilities in the world. They're hungry, not for food on the table. They're hungry to have the space to apply themselves, everything that they've got. They want to participate, they want to be included, they want to count. They have talent, immense talent. And UNDP is discovering this talent through a number of programs that we have. First is efforts to support startups. The second is entrepreneurship. We are partnering with foundations and other private sector to really power the space of entrepreneurs, particularly those that are young people. Because, Your Majesty, your government may be rich and may have a lot, but you will never be able to provide jobs for all of your youth as a public sector. So the private sector space needs to be activated to join in creating opportunities for these young people. They don't want to be destructive, they want to be constructive. I can almost bet on it. From Cape to Cairo, Africa's youth are really the biggest resource that we have. But we're not investing enough in them. We're seeing them mostly as a time bomb waiting to explode. We've been taught to think about our youth this way, rather than an asset to build a nation. And my core message this morning, Your Majesty, you know, we have natural resources, we have all of these resources we've been speaking about, but the most important resource are our people. And they are the youth. And we have an abundance of youth on the continent in Eswatini. I don't know what percentage of the population in Eswatini is youthful, but I can guess it's over 60%. As in most other African countries. So they really have to be at the center of our planning, of our designs. We have to have them in mind. And I say to my colleagues across the continent, if we make any development plan that doesn't have young people, youth, as a spine, we're missing the point. Because we're talking leaving out 70% of the population. So our footprint is only just around 30%. So the centrality, even as we speak investment, has to be the attention we pay to the young people. Someone said the high literacy rate in Eswatini, which means you have skilled, educated, literate people, young people in the country. But they graduate, then what do they do when they come out? This is when negative forces come in. They say an idle mind is the devil's workshop. So we have to put gainful employment in the hands of the youth, even as we train them for the new markets. And this is possible through all of these investments. Everything we talk about today and do today, we have to think, how does it affect the lives of the young people? How do we ensure that they benefit? When we talk Africa Continental Free Trade Area, where is the space for the youth of Africa to gain from that one Africa market? This is regional integration. When we talk about investment in that hotel, that 5-star hotel, which looks quite impressive, which will make Eswatini a conference tourism destination. What is the benefit for Eswatini's youth? Are they going to have access to provide the services there, for instance? Can we empower them to come up with businesses that service that hotel? Services, job creation, youth participation. Of course, we can talk women as well. For me, there is no Africa without women. The women, and I noticed the first person to clap was a man. It's a man, right? Because the men are the first to realize this, mothers of the nation. Where would any country be without its women? And we need to invest also in the women. Not in the small things for women. You know, I always react to the fact that whenever we talk women, we start talking micro, mini, small. I think we need to start taking women of Africa seriously. Your Majesty, I'm going to close. I think that a lot has been said. I have been fully educated about this amazing country. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that with your heart for your people, your passion, your intelligence, your visibility, your power to influence, with a cabinet of conscience, people like Senator Kumalo, with a full knowledge of how the world works, the world of business, with partners like Joe and Mr. East, with UNDP and the rest of the UN system behind you. In 5 years, we can lift all of Eswatini out of poverty. Let's get the work done. Thank you.
Your Majesty, invited guests, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we have heard from the Regional Director of UNDP, somebody who covers the entire continent, and I have noticed about 5 key messages. Eswatini is a kingdom at peace with itself. The country is an island of hope, not only for the country itself, but for the entire continent. The leadership is willing and ready to take its people out of poverty. We need to really invest in our youth and women. That we shouldn't be talking about micro investments. We should be talking about deep dive investment, transformative investment. And as a result of this, there's a need for us to turn the existing challenges into opportunities. And I always mention that as a development economist, I'm never worried about challenges when I see them, because it takes you to your next level. And we shouldn't be deterred by challenges around. Let's leverage it. There are messages in anything that comes around that. So on this note, I say a big thank you for the words of wisdom that we've heard from you. And I'm sure it's going to help us to shape the pathway of development, not only in Eswatini, but also in terms of the way we use it to attract investors into the country. So thank you very much. We're on the last lap of this particular event. We've heard from everyone. And because I come from an ancient kingdom, it's a town with 5 kings, 5 first-class kings. But in spite of the fact that they have 5 kings, there's always a chair, the pecking order in the kingdom. And anytime we want to introduce our kings, we don't allow people that do not know the king to do the introduction. That's the tradition of a town called Abeokuta in Nigeria. So, I'm going to apply this wisdom to really invite somebody who knows the Majesty very well to do the introduction. And this is somebody who has been driving this particular event, Honorable Minister Mankova Kumano.
Bayet, we're not phakathi. Siloskulu, we've come to the moment of truth in this particular gathering, where we are eagerly awaiting your remarks. I want to say to our distinguished guests today that what gives us energy and impetus as we execute our tasks is the drive and the energy that His Majesty has. He leads from the front, he holds us accountable, and he will make sure that every commitment that has been made here actually comes to fruition. With those few remarks, may I humbly ask the room to rise to our feet as we welcome His Majesty King Mswati III, the King of Eswatini, to come and make his address. Bait, we're not
Ingoskati the Queen, Your Royal Highnesses, UNDP Regional Director for Africa, Ms. Hauna Ezekonwa, United Nations representatives, ministers, members of the diplomatic corps, international investors and sovereign wealth funds present today, CEOs and captains of industry joining us, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Sinfusele Begune. We are pleased to be able to join you all today to participate in this business seminar held in between the United Nations session here in New York. As mentioned in our address at the General Assembly post-COVID-19, the Kingdom of Eswatini is on a drive to revive its economy and bring the much desired activity into our resource mobilization for all our programs that have been impacted by the pandemic, which also affected the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. This seminar is therefore an important opportunity to allow us to engage with the business community, investors, and multilateral financial institutions on how we can partner to tap into trade and investment in Eswatini in order to boost economic activity. Our kingdom has embarked on a strategy to resuscitate the economy through a private sector and export-led economy. With the global economy weathering the ongoing geopolitical tensions, Eswatini has not been spared from the high increase of all commodity prices as a net importer of fuel, fertilizer, and food. In 2021, Eswatini's GDP is estimated to have increased by 7.9%, which was supported by the easing of lockdown measures and robust recovery boosted by export-oriented subsectors. The impressive growth of the manufacturing activities and the use of digital platforms, which sustained growth in the ICT subsector, also contributed to this growth. The government of Eswatini has embarked on forward-looking initiatives that will continue to boost the economy activities in the country to eradicate poverty, create jobs, meet our social responsibilities, and overcome the challenges presented by the economic crisis. From our presentation by the Minister today, the various infrastructure projects will be a critical component to drive the required productive economy activity, as well as induce all necessary activities to lift the economy of the country. We wish to appeal to multinational financial entities to be sympathetic to the request for financial support that is necessary to make these programs a reality. We also wish to recognize and appreciate the support we continue to receive from UNDP through its numerous programs rolled out in the Kingdom. The Eswatini Investment Promotion Authority, IPA, a state-owned entity that is responsible for attracting, promoting, facilitating, and supporting investment and trade in Eswatini, is one of the beneficiaries of the technical support provided by UNDP in the country. IPA, through the support of UNDP, launched the Eswatini SDG Investor Map in July this year, which provides evidence, data, and concrete recommendations on viable business models to attract foreign and domestic investors while channeling the financial resources to the country's priority development areas and SDGs. As a result of this exercise, Eswatini will participate for the first time in the SDG Investment Fair to be held in December this year. In preparation for the SDG Investment Fair, Eswatini is receiving technical support from UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs, and we are grateful for facilitating. Today's seminar is a true reflection of your continuous support and fruits of our active partnership, including collaboration with other UN entities. The work that has been done under the Eswatini SDG Investor Map gives traction to our efforts, as we can now confidently approach investors with projects that have sound information supporting the opportunity, including indicative returns and other key sectors information around each area. We wish to give all you present here today the assurance of Eswatini's investment climate. Our objective is to encourage the expansion of existing businesses and increase rate of new investment projects while we actively exchange good business and development program opportunities in the Kingdom. We are constantly shaping our investment climate to ensure that the operational environment is more permissive to business. We are paying close attention to all factors in our control to stay competitive. The government seeks to ensure that the establishment of productive enterprises is done seamlessly. We do hope that you can therefore take advantage of the physical and non-physical support measures we provide to guarantee your investments in Eswatini. Through these facilities, the cost of establishing your business and the initial operational cost can be reduced significantly. We've made a determination on 6 sectors to prioritize as a strategic focus. These are manufacturing, agro-processing, mining, energy, agriculture, ICT, education, tourism, and as well as financial institutions. Investors can be assured of ease in movement of goods across borders, which has earned us the top spot in Africa when it comes to trading across borders according to the World Bank ease of doing business. Like many other countries, Eswatini has created special economic zones to leverage our export potential through attracting export-oriented manufacturing projects. We continue to position our country as a production hub in the region to take advantage of the ever-widening strategic markets for our goods in the trading blocks, which are actively part of. These include the African Continental Free Trade Area, which will boost intra-Africa trade, COMESA, and SACU, and SADC, to mention just a few. At this juncture, we would like to acknowledge the contribution of Rwanda and UNDP towards the success of this meeting. As I conclude, let me once again extend our appreciation to those who worked hard to putting together the list of key delegates who have been invited to attend today. We also extend our appreciation to all the participants for making the time to be part of this important investment seminar, where they got to learn more about the kingdom. We are hopeful that after the seminar, the business community, private sector, companies, and multinational investors represented here will commit to invest in Eswatini economy. This would mark the beginning of the future and further engagement, as well as a networking on investment opportunities. Hence, we say to you today that Eswatini is open for business. I thank you. May Almighty God bless us all.
Thank you very much, Your Majesty. We've heard directly from you, and the investors have heard as well. We just want to use this opportunity to say a very big thank you for the lack of leadership you've been providing for us. And we really want to build on the messages you have given to us in terms of the readiness of the country to roll out the investment pathway and a new development frontier for Eswatini. And if I could take the word from my regional director, that UNDP is ready to accompany Eswatini in this journey. We will mobilize our resources not only at the country, at the regional level, and at the global level to ensure that we work with my dear brother, Honorable Minister, and the other cabinet members to achieve this. So I just want to really echo that the investors that are here today, please don't go without making a commitment before you be here. Yes. We've heard from the Majesty, we need a commitment. On those 6 projects, please take at least one that to be bankrolled. So we are looking forward to that. Honorable Minister Kumalo, please ensure that all the investors that are here, and I'm happy you're sitting very close to our investors that have stayed for over 20 years, and I know the genuinity of the country, to really work with you to get commitment from all the investors, so that at least we can say by the end of the event, we have commitment of so in these particular 6 projects. Your Majesty, the Queen, invited guests, our captains of industries, members of diplomatic corps, representatives from all the investment community, as well as the Sovereign Wealth Fund group that are here, my colleagues from the United Nations system, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say a big thank you for this particular event. We want to make it a different one, because I have always said that if meetings and conferences are the major indicators of development, Africa will have become a paradise by now. Please, we have done the talking, let us do the walking. On this note, can I just call you to come and, well, I think the main thing is not for you to come, but for us to again look at the video we built in the beginning, so that it reminds us of the pathway we intend to really use in shaping the new development landscape in Eswatini. The video, please.
Bekunene njengoba senivele nitibonele ukuthi umsebenzi ube impumelelo lenkulu kakhulu, silo semhlaba sichubekile nokuthi sibeke embili inhlala kahle sive semaswati. Kanti ke sikubonile kwenteka lokhu nangesikhathi imbube emhlaba iphefumulela umhlaba khona kaMhlaba hlangene la khona ichazele ke baholi bemave emhlaba baphelele ngetinhlelo letikhona delivele Eswatini uthuthukisa inhlala kahle yesive. Kanti ke indzaba ichubekele khona la njengoba senibonile la khona silo semhlaba siphinde saqhubeka nokuthi ke sibeke ilivele Eswatini ethubeni lokuthi lingavakashelwa ngibo kusomabhizinisi. Lo hambo nje ke lwesilo semhlaba lapha eVen leMelika likhombile ukuthi imbube emhlaba inayo inshisekelo ukuthi sive semaswati sichubeke siphile siyembili neliveke likwati ukuthi noma ngabe likhinyabethe ngomkhuhlane iCovid-19 lashayeka emnothweni liphakame phindze livuka futhi lichubekele embili njengoba dinyenti isibili tinhlelo letikhona telive ukuthi emaswati athuthuke ayembili. Sengisandile makhanya lapha eMelika ukuthi kube kuhle ukuthi sibe nani kulo msebenzi wemakhosi sale kahle.
Wena beshoba lenkuzi kangwani ingani imnyama lesabeka wena Mswati lo ingoni emngonga kangani ingane lo wavusa kwethuka kwamagagula kadokolo ku labathe bahlala buhlala uhlalo kwaye kwethuka bakagamane bakamnisi nangunamanjolo umangelo nophakathi layelala la ngakhawula itati ngizamqolo njengokushimali naye labatalo yathi liyawufuna kwangitshela ukuthi kubayine malangeni jubala kusathalekisa ingilande esikolweni unelefa wena Mswati wase uba indlaluselwa wase uyayibamba impeniseli ngisho la kwasana ngayo mkhwase gijima ubona gohla ngeshaka kwetilwandle kwatamatama livela Mswati timbi bataphuma kusakala lathi ngwetaqela emuzini lapha emzimba tati bona ingonyama ehlane efika umbutho wena ngemkhombo welanga kangwani ingani ilanga laphuma etsheni lapha kangosikati tingabi sathe khane safeni tagijima tawutekela bonini emakhaya inani banele baphuma bahlolwa ngetikhalate emaguma makho setive ngonyana lemunya lapho setibuya imbunga umvemvakisi waselusaseni awuhlali phasi wesabathi intuli hlitole emhlophe ngeuhlula emanga emadodza mwawela usundu wekushe kwekuphephuka ematala wena-ke msawa hilikahilunelaka ekhane esafeni wena-ke mswathi ngekubusa ubuyelele wena wabhuza lisemkhoneni elisetandleni kuduma kwakho mswathi kunyakathi sewumhlaba wongane ingani kwathi kwabhoda isikwahlandle kulakamlumbi ingani kwathi mashalaga saphuma moyitela nomashikizela kangwane inganashiye umbutho wokuhlakula inani lengwena lapha esitheni kulanqabane wayesewufane emhlambi emagwalagwala wena mswathi ingani usulwasulwa nendvodza esihlahleni kufa kondvodza kuwumtamo wona lo fluzu uthi kangwane emhlabeni nangemngqingo njengenkomo izawusengwa wona sibhabaza kuyasa kangwane ingani umdumo unjengezulu emambala mswathi yababa mhlohlo babela izingomo zikagogo wakho ngoba uyazibona nangemkhondo kangwane ingane ziyandinda ngisho kuloluphondo lwengongoni kangwane esiqopholothi wona mswathi logabe abantu kangwane ingani bonjengamathanga waqhakaza-ke mswazi omnyama kulabaluthuli waba njengekuvuma kwenqwala uyimbubu ingonyama udle ematholo ezinyathi ayethe wona phakathi khula mlisa khula nzanzane elive bakwesabe betiphelele betiphala